We are recording, so for those of you who are not up late on a Tuesday night, you can hear it tomorrow, like probably Pete will at work when he's bored. So, all right, Gilly, want to get us started?
Yeah. So we were just talking earlier about kind of our run sheet. Tonight we're going to talk about uh, free agency, what we thought, which teams did good, which teams did bad. We're going to talk a little bit about the divisions. We're going to dig into the concept of the relief pitcher. What the hell's the problem with our relief pitchers in this league? Why are we seeing a lack of them? Why are their contracts exploding? And what can we do to change that trajectory? And then for each team, we're going to predict what we think 2086 is going to look like, and then who the risers and fallers are. Maybe even throw out some awards. I probably didn't spend enough time on the awards, Mizzy, so you might have to.
Let's be fair. I cheated on my award selection, so it's fine.
All right, cool. Yeah, so I don't know if you want to go ahead and get started. Let's just dig into the. We can go. We can start in the AL if you want, and kind of go through each division, and talk a little bit about. I don't know if we have to do any of this in specific order, but we could talk about kind of the grades that each team got and why we thought they got and deserve whichever grade.
I always feel bad for the NL West because they're always the last to talk about. But considering my name, last name begins with a Z, I don't feel that bad because I've had to do that, my whole life. So, but yeah, AL East makes sense for me. Let's start there. I mean, I think it's obvious who the favorite in the AL East remains, and that's the Yankees.
Yep,
So
yep.
that really hasn't changed, and I fear that that may not change for a while. And let's be fair, I might be a small part to blame on that, at least on the offensive side. And then them a couple good bats a few years ago. So are they still good bats? They still look like good bats. So yeah, but listen, Erickson knows what he's doing over there. He's got a good lineup built there. He's got a tremendous pitching staff, um, and he just keeps plugging forward. So I don't think this is the year that they get knocked off by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, honestly, I think they're the probably favorites in the AL. If I had to pick one team out of the AL that I think would be the most likely to at least get to the World Series, it would be the Yankees. But I say that every year, and not every year do they go. So, well, I mean, we'll see what happens. But I like their team. I do. Though I think they had one of the not. No, that wasn't them. I'm looking at somebody else. Okay. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I like them too. I think they've got arguably the best pitching staff, best pitching group of pitchers in the file. I graded them at an A in both offense and pitching. So with Sean Walker being my crush on their team, definitely got them a little teaser, but I definitely have them in the World Series. They didn't really do much on it during free agency. They picked up some guys, I think, mainly for their bench. Um, but I really like Montreal as well. I think they're kind of the team that I would target as kind of a riser in that league. Offensively, they've got some firepower. They're just a little weak on the pitching side. I graded them at a B minus. Um, they're going to struggle in that division when they got to play against teams like New York and Baltimore. Baltimore's another team that I think's done pretty well for themselves. I graded them both at an A in offense and A in pitching. They know how to get on base. So definitely going to be a battle between Baltimore and New York, and Montreal being kind of the team that I like their makeup. Raul Serrano is a really good player. And then with Toronto kind of just, down at the bottom of the division, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I think honestly between the two, I've been surprised at Montreal the last couple years because they've been on a little bit of a run here. And again, this is not some kind of world-beating run, but I mean it's pretty damn good. 4 years ago, they won the World Series, and they won the division the year after. Been wild card the last 2 years. I mean, they've had this nice little streak going, and I don't know how. I honestly I don't know how. Nothing. They don't have these guys that's like you look at their pitching staff and you're just like, ooh, like it looks a bit rough. Like but they pitched well. Like they have guys
Yeah.
that pitched well, or at least well enough. And then I'm saying the same thing on the hitting side. You see a couple guys that and now Last year they added Nace, and then they added McAllister this year. So I mean, they're adding the right guys to that offense. But before those two guys were there, you look at their offense and you're like, how are these guys winning this many games and doing what they're doing? Like I don't know what it is. I don't know
Yeah.
what G before he left, um, and then left, did over there. But there's some kind of magical dust sprinkled somewhere over there that's just
Well,
causing them to win games. And I think this might be the year that they might slip a little bit. And I hate to say that because Mike has done a nice job kind of adding those bats that they really need in that lineup. But the pitching, he just hasn't been able to address the pitching
yep, yep.
to the
I think
points,
defensively, they do it with their defense. They went out and got Vasquez from Minnesota in the offseason.
which was a
And
smart pickup for them.
yeah, I like him. And they have got they're strong up the middle with Vasquez now, and then Lindell at second base, and Jensen plays a good third base. So I think we scratch our heads and wonder, well, how the hell are they doing this? Well, they have a good defense, especially in the infield, and they do. They have added some power with Nace. I don't know how many home runs McAllister will hit over time, but he's a good bat.
If they are both uh, nearly identical players, if I'm remembering correctly. Now let me pop in here and double check a little bit. I mean, yeah, I mean you look at them; they're very close. Nace has a bit more eye and a touch more power and a touch less contact, but they're more or less the same kind of first baseman.
Mm-hmm.
Nace is hitting a lot more home runs than people thought he would. People thought he'd be like a 20 to 25 guy, and he's regularly at that kind of 30 home run mark. At least the last couple seasons he has been. And then hitting 30 plus doubles. I mean, he's putting it together. McAllister's going to be the same way. He's going to hit about 20 home runs and 30 to 40 doubles. Like they're not the first baseman everybody maybe goes gaga over, but they're good first basemen and they're going to put up some good numbers offensively. And they're both pretty good defensively too, if I'm remembering correctly. So it should not be an issue for them. That's actually going to help them quite a bit. The issue they're going to have is not only do they in the same division as the Yankees, but Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's gonna get their panties all in a twist about this, but I think Baltimore. I think this could be their year that they finally take that step forward. That we've kind of been waiting to see what they're going to do, and I think what they were going to do is they're just waiting until some of these guys get ready. Um, they look ready. Like
Yep.
it appears that they're going to have a solid team this year, and I would not be surprised if they finish ahead of Montreal in the division and possibly snag a wild card spot.
Yep, I'm a big fan of Baltimore. I don't remember who I was getting an argument with. It might have been Peter, which doesn't
Just
surprise me.
if you're in an
But
argument, the safe bet is Peter or Maddie.
I think
No
it was
offense, no
Peter.
no offense to either of them, but those are the ones. Well, or Mike, one of those three. Let's just
Peter's
broaden it a little bit.
more fun to get in an argument with. Maddie, I just let him win because it's not fun. You just say, "Yep, you're right," and then it helps him kind of remain calm. But Peter's fun to get an argument with. But I think I got an argument with him on Baltimore. I think for whatever reason, I think I said that I liked them a lot, and he took a different approach. He likes New York, which I do like New York too, but um, I'm not sure he's sold on Baltimore. Their hitting is great. I went after Turner a couple times as well as one of their pitchers. They've got a great pitching staff. All of the guys can, outside of Santos has got some home run issues, but a lot of them know how to get guys out, and they've done it for a number of years. They've got some relief pitching, but I don't know if it's been completely proven. Hensler is going to probably take the primary role as closer. We'll see if he can actually do the job for a whole season. But yeah, they've got power. They score runs. They're exciting to watch. I'm not sure they're defensively as strong.
That
They've got a good
that is their
shortstop.
number one issue is their defense.
Yeah.
And they need, and we talked about this in main chat a couple days ago. And this is one of the things that Maddie was absolutely right about. There's a couple tinkers they can make with that. That's going to make a pretty good difference for them. So if they do that and they tinker just right, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Like they've got a lot of young bats that I dig. A couple older bats that I'm surprised that they still have, but
Mm-hmm.
that's maybe not here nor there. So I think this is the year that they finally, as long as HH gets out there, does what he needs to do as far as putting that lineup in properly and continue to make sure that it stays that way, um, then they're going to make some noise. I think they're going to make a lot of noise. Again, I
Yeah.
would not be surprised they finish ahead of Montreal um, in the division.
Yep, I agree. I had Baltimore second with one of the wild card spots. Montreal's third, Boston's fourth, and then Toronto last in that division.
That's about how I have it shaken out as well. Yeah, I have Boston and Toronto kind of neck and neck. To be honest, they're almost identical, honestly, as far as the record goes. I mean, as I see it. So, but I think it'd be New York, Baltimore, Montreal, and then Boston, Toronto, kind of just in a
Mm-hmm.
coin flip situation for which one finishes fourth and which one finishes fifth. So it'll be
Yep.
interesting, kind of to see how that goes. And I don't think, but I'm not sure that we're going to get a wild card out of the East this year. I think it'll be the West and the Central that kind of have the two wild cards again. But if I were to pick one of those teams for the wild card, I'd give the edge to Baltimore at the moment.
Yeah. Well, good. Do we want to go into the Central then?
Yeah, let's move on to the AL. Let's move on to the shit show that is the AL Central.
From a team perspective, I'm a big fan of Minnesota. I probably don't lead on as much when I'm talking to Brent, but
Why would you? He likes them well enough for all of us combined. We don't need to pump that any more than it's already been pumped.
yeah, I think he likes his team more than I like Pitt, which I would too if I had his team. But he also probably out of all the teams, I think he probably did the best for himself in free agency. He definitely was the most aggressive, but he went out and got quite a few pieces in free agency. Spent a lot of money, lots of money. So um, definitely have him, that team leading the division. I think that team will take the division. I think overall it's a pretty weak division. Um, with he's far and away. I both graded his offense at an A minus and his pitching at an A. But I'm really excited to see how far he can take that team. Lilburn is a great pitcher, obviously, young guy, but it's it depends on how far his pitching takes him. We'll see.
Yeah, I think everything revolves around pitching for most teams. Most teams can find bats. They might not be 94 overall guys, but you can find a good 84, 85, 86 overall guy, or even lower that's going to get the job done for what you need. I had a different take on their off season free agent spending. Um, to an extent, I thought it was a bit silly, honestly. I think some of the moves that he made, some of the free agency choices he made were not necessarily bad choices. But when you look the kind of length of the contract and how much money each of those players got compared to what they have done, I was a bit just I don't want to say upset because I really don't. It's not like I care one way or the other. Um, but concerned maybe is the more appropriate term. Like Casey Pug, don't get me wrong, 31 Pug, Pug,
Puke,
whatever.
yeah.
Pug sounds like pubes. That just sounds wrong. Maybe it's Pug. Listen, good vitals. I think Maddie probably said this in chat too. So if I start sounding like Maddie, please feel free to stop me. Good vitals. He's had a pretty good career up until this point. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you look at a guy that's around 3.5 for his career, almost 100 wins. Doesn't seem gave up a lot of home runs last year. Like the last 2 years have kind of been his top two home run years. Um, so I don't know if that is going to be a long term issue or if that's just kind of a blip on his radar. But signing him to that how many 6 years, 16 apiece contract seems a bit worrisome. Especially if I'm a guy personally that does put stock into pitches quite a bit. He's got one really good pitch and nothing really else. So if he takes another drop per se, and like again, he's kind of been level most of his career from 25 on. I mean, he's kind of right there. As I'm making hand gestures that nobody can see but me. So, but he starts dropping the next year or two, that contract's gonna get bad quick. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and, and
Go
And
ahead.
Tony Rasliff, like, okay, he was a guy that I kind of was looking at for agency myself, but you look at some of his career, some of his years that he's had. and you're just, ooh, like there's a couple years there that he only pitched 15 innings, like 80, 81. He only pitched 15 innings both those years. Like, and he pitched very poorly those 2 15 innings. Yeah, the last 3 years after that, 82 to 304, he pitched very well. Um, Last year he pitched like shit. Last year he had a 6.3 ERA. So and they had a 3.12 batting average against. Like he was not a good pitcher. Yeah, his dice was much lower, for what that's worth. But to give that guy the biggest per year um contract for a relief pitcher this year seemed a bit crazy to me. And again, the pitches aren't really there. He's got a poor fastball, a okay splitter, and a non-existent circle change. Like, yeah, the last 3 years before this, he's pitched very well, but I don't know. That's the only saving grace there is it's only a 4 year contract and not a 5 or a 6. But I think that's going to get rough for him fast.
Yeah, I struggle with just giving somebody that much money in a relief role. It probably has something to do with our out of balanced, relief pitching that we're getting crazy on in terms of paying for salary.
All right, and we're going to get into that. And there's another thing that is a little bit weird is his walk decay ratio is pretty poor. I mean, it's almost 1 for 1. I mean, the year before it actually was a little bit higher. We had 28 walks and 27 strikeouts. So I mean, there's some concern. Again, I'm not knocking him as a pitcher. I mean, he's a guy that had the cards fallen a different way, I might have gone after to a certain extent. But that contract with that arm seems dangerous. Just
Yep.
seems very dangerous.
Yeah, if we go back to Pew or Pubes or whatever we want to call him,
Yeah, we call him pubes. I think
Pubes. We'll call him
Brent would love
Pubes.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
we got Menzies and we got Pubes, so we got a couple characters.
Listen, we had a fuck out a couple years ago. I'm not too worried about it.
So looking at his staff a little bit, it hit the division could lean or land on Pube only because Littleburn could get injured. I mean, I could see a scenario where Littleburn or Andrew have an extended period of time when they're on the bench, and Brent's having to use Pubes to try to win him games, and it might not go over very well. So depending
And
on how he pitches this year could make or break Minnesota in that division.
I think you're absolutely right. If he has 1 or 2 bad injuries on that staff, again, most teams, if you have 1 or 2 bad injuries on their staff, they're going to be hurt. But he has nobody backed up. I mean, he's probably going to go out and sign a couple guys when we're not looking, or try to trade for some non-existent guys. But like he has no backup. His minors are crap, and I think
Yeah.
that's another problem that he has. Like he runs very much kind of like he'll draft a bunch of guys and then trade most of those guys, but keep 1 or 2. And he'll trade his whole draft class, but keep a pick or 2 later, and just like try to pick up some guys. Like outside of the one guy that we're not gonna let's call him Voldemort. We're not gonna call him by name. On that offensive side, like his minors are non-existent, so he's running a very very tight ship that he's gonna have to spend big like he did on free agency this year on guys that might not be as good, and then trade all of his picks for that one guy. And again, that one guy that he got this year, Fretwell, was probably a very good pickup by him. I mean, it was a very good trade on your part too. You got a lot of nice talent or cap coming back for that, but like that'd be a good pickup for him. That makes a difference in his lineup. But he can't keep doing that year in and year out because eventually it's going to fail. Eventually he's going to trade for the wrong guy, or he's really going to have nothing to trade. There's not going to be a good free agent class, and things are going to start to fall apart. So I mean, Minnesota's kind of pulling the Kansas City and kind of living on that edge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, maybe it's just me. I'm not ballsy enough to live that way, but it's a tightrope that he keeps walking. Eventually, he's going to fall off and just get
So
sliced in
do you
two.
think he trades Gabusi or however you say it?
No,
No.
no. And honestly, there was a lot of scuttlebutt about that whole Peter offer. And while I saw both sides of that I could understand both sides of that. Like, that could have put him over the top last year, and he could have kept some of those guys, and had a much better looking team right now, without him. I'm also not as high on Gabusi as I'm sorry, Voldemort. Damn it, I said his name. On Voldemort as he is. I really think he's going to look a lot like Jaquan Brown, who's on the Yankees right now, without the defense.
Mm-hmm.
I know Mass keeps yelling at me. Or I'm sorry, Brent keeps yelling at me about that and disagreeing a lot. But I think that that's where he ends up looking like. And we'll see. If for Brent, hopefully I'm way wrong. And if I'm right, then I'll get a good "I told you so," and it'll be a well-deserved one at that.
So let's look at the rest of the division. I had a hard time with this division. I think I got in an argument with Peter on this as well.
Probably.
I struggled with who I felt was gonna. I consider this kind of a weak division, only because you've got. I think Minnesota is the team to beat, but you've got GB, who I wouldn't bet against because he's been here and done that, and he's always got a puncher's chance. I love me some Raul Perez. So he's got a good pitching staff. I think he's hitting wise, he's probably above average, but I don't know if he's got the power to do or the pop to do it this year. Team I did like, even though I feel like Detroit's going to be second, I don't think Detroit will get a wild card spot, is Chicago. I felt like Chicago is one of those teams that's a rising team in the Central. If I look at which of those teams is the rising team, they've got some good hitting, but they're really, really lacking on pitching. And they did not make any significant moves this offseason to acquire any pitching in free agency.
Yet. They haven't made any offensive moves yet. They're a team that once he comes online, I haven't seen him online in a while. I could see him trying to. Well, actually, I talked to him a bit not too long ago. I guess I'm trying to get gauge some interest in some stuff that, of course, is never going to happen. But yeah, his pitching's a little bit weak. But that hitting, good lord, you look at that lineup and
he's got some good hitters.
Well, and then you look at his minors. He's got a bunch about to come up too. Highbarger's not too far off. Stoneman, Caprese, Spencer, Stanton. It's not that these guys are going to be barn burners by any stretch of the imagination, but he's got some good bats coming up too. And some of those he could use for trade bait to get one of those or two of those pitchers that he needs to really round out that team. I mean, he's got a tremendous bullpen at the very least. Two of my favorite guys there sitting at the top of that bullpen, just crushing people. So I think Chicago is going to be quite good. Now, I will disagree with you on one thing. I think Detroit's going to win the division. I honestly think Detroit's going to win the division, and I think it's going to be a bit of a fight for Chicago and Minnesota for that second place in a wild card spot. I really do. And again, you look at Detroit and you're like, well, where's the hitting? Yeah, it's not necessarily there. I mean, you got Hainsworth, who was just an unaging god. And after him, you've got a lot of fill-in pieces that 5-6 seasons ago people will be paying draft class to try to get, and are now kind of settled into this kind of ho-hum existence. Looking at Juan Drago and Brian Black and some of these guys, Brian Wolfhurst even, like some of these guys were guys that people would have paid a ton for to get a couple seasons ago. Now they're just kind of knocking around in Detroit, putting up okay numbers, but the pitching's where it's at. I honestly really, really, really like their pitching staff. I mean, especially if you look at what they did last year. You have two guys that are young. Nita is 26, Truesdale is 22. They both had sub-3 ERAs with 200 innings pitched. And then Raul Perez at the top had a 3 almost on the dot, also 220 innings pitched. So these are guys that aren't really getting injured. They're getting a lot of innings pitched, and they're pitching very, very well.
Yeah.
Look, you had Sean Watson last year pitching 249 in 100 innings. Even Brian Peel, a guy that most people, probably wouldn't think too much of. He's got some solid vitals, young, 26, under 4. And then you look at the bullpen, and they have Marquez, who's got to be the best closer in the file at the moment, I'd say, or if not damn near close to it. And he's just crushing at the back end of the bullpen, and then he kind of fills in around that. Got Cecil K's. If he keeps him, trades him, who knows? But one of those guys he keeps floating out there. They've got a very healthy pitching staff and enough kind of journeyman hitters. I think that they're gonna take the division. I know Brown's gonna make a push for it. He's gonna really try, but I think he's gonna be fighting with Chicago for that second place.
Well, yeah, I think, like you said, we're gonna have to disagree. I think Minnesota's got it unless they run into injury problems. I think their offense and pitching grade out higher than Detroit's, the highest in the division. I think Chicago's offense grades similar, but I still like Minnesota's. So I think it's gonna be interesting. I think like I said, I wouldn't bet against GB. I know Peter wanted me to take a bet. I can't quite
No,
remember
not
which
Peter.
one
He
it
doesn't.
was.
He never wants bets.
Well, we were talking about a bet. I don't remember exactly what it was, but
No, that never happens.
yeah, we'll have a bet somewhere in there.
I know you will. Listen, Minnesota does have a better lineup. I'm not going to say they don't. They do. They have a better lineup than Detroit. Chicago has a better lineup than Detroit. But I think Chicago has the pitching's what really hurts them. I mean, if you took Detroit's pitching and put them with Chicago's hitting, you'd have a team better than the Yankees. But that's not the way it works. So
Mhm.
I think GB has the hitters that will be just enough to get through. And maybe this is the year he finally finds that young hitter that he actually likes and trades his draft class for. I doubt it. Hasn't happened in the last 6 years, but maybe this is the year he does do it. But I mean, I don't know. I just think GB's got it. I think Mass has the pitching too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think Mass and GB, their pitching are about the same. I mean, Minnesota and Detroit have similar pitching, but I'm giving the edge to the relievers to Detroit. And I think that's what's going to make the difference in some of those games.
So one thing I wanted to point out, I think did Andy and Ryan take Kansas City?
Yes.
Yeah, they've got a big job on their hands. That's a team that I graded them at a D in both offense and pitching.
Oh yeah, Kansas City was a bit of a mess when Mike jumped ship. I mean, not a terrible mess, but they were a bit of a mess. And G Money came in last year and kind of traded a bunch of stuff away, got some capital, and didn't maybe make the best use of it. So were starting on a down foot, but I mean they've already gained a first round draft pick for that one pitcher they have had that Nigel
Hinton.
Hinton. Yes.
Yeah, I like him.
He's a very solid pitcher. Young guy, not making too much money. I mean, so Arizona they got rid of him for a first, and then that first round draft pick that Andy took a couple years ago for Arizona, the outfielder. So
I think they should find somebody to take Paul Rosen from him. They could get a pretty decent.
They will. Somebody will take Rosen. Somebody will take Monel. Someone will take Hessen. Somebody. They've got nothing that screams, "Wow, I have to have." But they've got a nice, wow, enough nice pieces that they're going to get some draft capital out of, and then they're going to just stock that farm to the best of their ability, and then keep stocking it to the best they can next couple of years, and then Kansas City will start kind of flipping around at that point.
Yep.
And then Cleveland's in that division. Should probably talk about Cleveland a little bit. Cleveland is not quite there. They're still rebuilding, but I believe they have the second overall pick this year, don't they? Am I misremembering
that? Yes, they do.
Yeah, so that's going to help them probably, especially if they keep that, which I don't see why they wouldn't. I know he's trying to trade James Bird right now and like a couple other guys. He's not too far off. Like a lot of his young guys are starting to get ready, starting to come up, and some more will be coming up soon. He's got a couple nice young pitchers too over there. So I'd say another year or two, like we're going to be talking about how Cleveland's going to be pushing for that division too, and that's going to be a real fun time for that division because Chicago will be in their own, Detroit and Minnesota will still be there, and then Cleveland will be coming to contend. Like that'll become a real murderous kind of division in the next 2 years.
Yep. You can definitely tell Matty is working on building in youth in the team. They're just a couple of years away.
He's done a very good job so far to kind of get that talent in there, hold on to it, and then kind of add more talent to it. So I really like what he's done over there so far. It's going to be scary to
so
watch.
Much of it's trying to so much of it's difficult in trying to time both the offense and the pitching to get the pitchers at the same time as your hitting is taking off. So I know he's building up his pitching, and I can see it. He's got some young guys, but will the hitting be a little bit further ahead than the pitching? I don't know. And then
I think it will be, and I think that's not the problem. I think you'd rather have it that way. You'd rather have those hitters have a couple years under their belt, or even a season or two, just so they're doing what they need to do, and then kind of bring the pitchers on board. Because if you're hitting the ball, even if the pitcher's having a down season, like as long as you're crushing it on the offensive side, it's going to make up for the pitching side. So.
Mm-hmm. All right, should we move into the left coast here?
Yeah, that's my favorite place to be.
Cool. So I have Houston taking this division, but I have them struggling on the pitching side. I think this team is a team at risk. I think, offensively, they are mashing the ball. They'll have no problems there. But I felt like they needed to go out and find somebody in the offseason to add to that arm, or to add to their staff, someone with a big arm. Because I think they're a team that's, they've had Javi Ramirez for a while now. They got him from Texas, who's a really good pitcher. But overall, I mean, you've got Trottier as your number 2. I don't think he's a number 2. So I think they've got to do something if they want to contend for the World Series, and if they want to win the AL. They're going to have to improve their pitching. Their offense is there, so they went out and got Priestley, so they're investing in their offense. But I feel like they could go out and get a big arm from some team and really, really contend for the AL.
And who did they just get today? They got somebody else just today that I thought it was
In a
today. Maybe it was
trade?
yesterday. Yeah, I swear they picked up somebody in a trade. I was just like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing.
I didn't see that.
I might be, I might be just completely just out of my gourd. That is always possible.
Yeah, we can look.
No,
Hold
no, I'm
on.
completely out of my gourd. That's what it is. Good Lord.
I don't see anything in the last.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just stupid. Never mind. Ignore me. I'd
No, they did with
swear.
Baltimore. They just did it. They got their first
But
baseman.
that's janky. Okay, good.
Yeah.
I see. I'm not crazy. Oh
I
well.
don't
I mean,
think they should have done that. I
I,
wouldn't have done
I so Tyler Janke, like he's a guy that he's a guy I remember when he was drafted. He was one of those years where there was a dozen decent first basemen. And everybody was kind of taking who they wanted. But yeah, so they sent their first and second round for Janke. But again, this is to your point. They already have good offense.
that. Mm-hmm.
So they just added another big bat to
I mean,
their
he's a
offense.
decent bat, but
Yeah.
his on base. He's got a good eye and good contact. But I would have, if I were them, I would have used those picks plus anything else to move for a big arm.
Pitcher, right? Exactly. Yeah, because Janke is one of those guys that he's a contact eye guy. Like he's gonna get on base, he's gonna hit some doubles, but he's the home run where the home run's gonna be. Played 120 games, Lester hit 3 of them and 26 doubles. Like, yeah, it's a good bat to have. He was a 386 on base percentage. That's great. But where's this fit in their lineup? So he's throwing them in at DH. I think he said in the trade thing. Okay, so you throw him at DH. So where's Whiteside? So Whiteside's going to the outfield. Fine. So okay, you're adding more bats to the mix, sure. But the pitching, I think you're right. Detroit a good pitcher, very good pitcher, but he's a 3-4.
Yep.
Maybe on a really good team, maybe even. So the pitching is, and again, I think Robert Norway is. I think he's a solid pitcher, if not a really good pitcher. The people just don't understand. He's only 26. Like he has some good pitching.
Yeah,
James
I mean,
Asburn's not too
I
bad.
graded his pitching as a B.
Yeah, it's
It's
good. The
not super.
bullpen maybe a little bit weak. Maybe need a little bit of work done there. Um, but he just he added Janky. It's
Yeah.
just it seemed like a weird ad to me. And again, maybe he knows his team better than I do.
I
You
think he
think he
missed
didn't?
an opportunity. I think in order to compete,
Yeah.
I think he missed an opportunity, especially with you in the division. I got you guys competing for that division. I have you taking the wild card spot, but your pitching is far and away better than, it's almost the exact opposite. His hitting is really good. His pitching is a B. Your pitching is really good. Your hitting is more of a B, B minus. So I think if you can add some hitting potentially, then you could have you could take that division away from Houston. Otherwise, it's going to be looking, in my opinion, looking more like a wild card spot.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't. I'm not gonna pick a 1 and 2 in this division because I think you're right. I think Seattle, Houston are the 1 and 2 in the division. What order they end up in, God only knows. Yeah, the hitting side in Seattle, I like it, but they're my team, so I should like it. I think there's a fair amount of power in there, and a lot of on base percentage, and really good defense and really good pitching. So I'm going to roll with it. I finally have a closer again, which is kind of a nice thing to have. So I'm kind of excited to see how this season rolls out.
Yep, I really like your pitching. Graded as an A. But definitely, if you could, and I do like Hernandez as a closer. I think that was a good add. I think that if you can get another bat, you've got some hitters. Obviously, there's some unproven guys too. You've got Weber, who's hasn't had a lot of starts under his belt.
Nah, he's had the one season.
Yeah, and then you've got Talley, who I don't know if your lineup's set correctly, but
It is.
he hasn't even hit at all at the major league level.
No, he has not.
And
But
McBride,
his defense alone is going to make me love him. So
yeah, I think McBride, if you could upgrade McBride, that he hasn't had a lot of opportunity either. I'm not sure where he goes.
he's one of those guys that when I traded Shields earlier this year, the reason why I did that is to give him the start in center field. I like McBride. Got him from Colorado years ago, so he's been sitting in my minors, just agonizingly slowly getting better. And he kind of had a little half-time season last year, so I'm very excited to give him a shot at the full-time job and see what he can do. I don't think he's going to be some super bat, but I think he's going to be a pretty good player. So it'd be hard. See, that's the thing. I look at my offense and I don't see any place that I would want to upgrade. But I can see your point in center field just being a little bit wishy-washy there. And that's kind of why I did go out and trade my other left fielder and pick up Cecil Nation, just to kind of get one of those more established bats in the lineup. And no matter what GB says, I am not going to start Byron Manning, so stop asking.
Yeah, I think, and it's easy to pick every team apart, right? Everybody's got some weakness, unless you're Arizona or New York.
Yeah.
But every team's got at least one or two spots that they'd like to upgrade. I know I do. At Pittsburgh, definitely have a few spots, obviously, but I think you've got a really good opportunity. And considering your pitching it's getting a little long in the tooth. You've got Tom Williams, who's 36, and Stewart, who's 32. They're no spring chickens. So, Gantz is obviously a number one. So I would just hate to see those, if the opportunity presents itself to add a center fielder or somebody else. Like I love Lucy, Paul Lucy, he's a great bat. But if there's an opportunity, I think this would be the right time, because if those pitchers start to get a little bit beat up, as they're aging and they start to decline, then, obviously you got Hudgens there, who's going to be a great arm, and he's young, but definitely want to take advantage of the opportunity, because I think Houston's beatable. I don't think they've made the right moves in the offseason. I think you can take them if there's the opportunity there that presents itself.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see kind of how the West plays out. I think it's going to be a bit of a two-team race this year. I definitely see Seattle and Houston being the two to kind of move forward out of that, and then kind of everybody else middling behind them. Like, Los Angeles, Ohm's kind of looking to kind of almost rebuild a little bit again, or kind of not rebuild, but retool. His team didn't quite come forward as he thought they would, so he's kind of in a holding pattern right now. Oakland, Doug didn't do too much this offseason that I saw, so, and I think he's in a bit of a holding pattern as well. And then Texas is getting closer. War Priest knows what he's doing down there. He drafts scarily well, so I think we're not too far from seeing him start to kind of emerge from that rebuild shell a little bit.
Really?
And start by soon I mean like
Texas.
3 years, 4 years. Yeah.
I think they're a long ways away on the pitching side. They've got some major issues. I gave them both a D on offense and pitching, obviously because they're rebuilding, but they've got some young guys in their farm, but they're a ways away. I'm thinking at least before they're even thinking about competing will be another 4 years, maybe 5, just because of the lack of pitching they have. I just know how long those things take, because I've done it enough on my own team to know how long those things take.
Sure. So yeah, listen, I'll definitely lean on your piece on that one. Rebuild well.
Clements is awesome, by the way. That guy,
Yeah.
if you can
That
snag him away from Texas, which he'll never trade, but
why
he's a
and
good
why
second
and
baseman.
God, why would he? Like I remember that year because he was on my list and I had like a comp pick that year or like a real high second round pick. And I had Chris Clements penciled. I literally had him penned in there for next to my pick number. Like, this is who I'm taking. Like, can't wait. And then he goes the 22nd pick. I'm just like, oh, oh, God damn it. And that was one of the years that I realized, oh, if they look good, just take them as soon as you can, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, they might be, I don't know, they might be a little bit farther away than I think, but I like the direction they're going.
Yep. I think they're definitely on, they're on the way up. It's just going to take a long time. I think it's going to
It
take a
might,
long time. They're not the
it
worst
might.
team that I graded. That team's coming up pretty soon.
Oh, well, we've gotten out of the AL and we've not hit the worst team yet, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's pretty bad on the other side in the NL East. One of those teams is
Oh, geez,
pretty
I wonder
rough.
which one you're going to tear apart. I wonder if it begins with an A.
Yeah. Yep. Should we
Listen,
should we jump over to the NL?
let's mosey on over and have some fun.
Yeah, so definitely Atlanta takes the cake for the worst offense and the worst pitching, worst lineup reviewed on either side of the ball, really. They're just
Yeah,
bad.
they're rebuilding.
Yeah, but on the same time, he didn't, he did do some activity in the free agent market. I think he was trying to fill in spots, but definitely a rebuilding team, obviously, because I know Stang likes to slash and burn. It wasn't that long ago that they were in the World Series. How long ago
No,
was that?
a year or two.
So yeah, so you go from a World
All
Series
right.
team to one of
Yeah.
the worst teams the worst team in the league. That's a pretty hard slash and burn. I know GB and Peter would not be in favor of that kind of consistent behavior.
No, they would not like it. But and again, it was one of those things. I think that that's that fine line I was talking about earlier. You run this line where you have way too much money tied up in your team, and you try to keep the best players because you need to win. But then you're paying out the ass. I mean, I remember the one year. I'm pretty sure it was Atlanta. I bought their first round pick for like $75 million. Um, but it funded him for a season and a half. And so you get kind of in that right. And that's the same thing New York does. New York every year comes on board, sells their second round pick for as much money as they can to afford to keep playing, which is sad, but it's the way that it works, especially for those big markets. In New York's case, and in Atlanta's case, because they had all these amazing players that they were paying a shit ton of money for because they had to. Um, and it kind of goes on. So, and I was gonna harsh all over his one free agent signing, just because when I was prepping for this, I kind of picked up all the signings out of the file here, but they're not necessarily right. So I can't hate on it as much as I wanted to, because the money that they signed for, obviously, and they had to fix once he did it, so it was a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, they are what they are. They're probably going to be fighting for or easily get the number one pick in the draft next year. Um, but that's not the worst thing for them because they have some guys on the offensive side of the ball that I think are going to be ready in the next couple of years that are going to be pretty good. Like they slash and burned hard, but their minors didn't suffer too much. They have some pretty good pitchers, I think, in the minors on the pitching side as well. So while it was a real rough slash and burn, if they can flip it in a year or two, which again is going to be a hard thing to do, um, they'll keep that budget that they have, and so they'll be able to keep buying people out of free agency, and it won't look as bad as it may right now.
All right, let's move on to. So in this division, I was looking at this one. Now that we got through the shit show of Atlanta, but I have New York winning this division.
Ooh,
So this division was also very hard for
Oh, I hear a bunch of beeps. Is that us? Let's
Yeah,
see.
I'm sure people
I got.
won't disagree or will
Yep.
disagree,
Yep.
but
That's Jermaine.
that's all right. Um, him and Peter are very similar. They like to argue. Um, so New York, I have them winning the division. I think their pitching is very strong. Obviously, Florida is right there. I've got them taking the wild card. They've got great pitching. They've got lots of good contact hitters on the offensive side of the ball. So it's not like I don't like Florida. I just think New York. I think they're going to take the division ahead of Florida with guys like Pendergast. I think they've got a little bit of an edge on the offensive side. Florida did not participate at all in free agency, so I give them a big F for free agency. They could have gone out and got some more hitting, and they could still, if they went out and got somebody on the offensive side of the ball, I think it would be huge for them to add some more offensive firepower. Um, that could help take them ahead of New York and put them over the edge in terms of competing. I think New York would be a great team to go out and get Rosen from Kansas City. I think if they wanted to go out, because they don't have much at shortstop right now. But if New York wanted to shore up that division a little bit more, they should go out and look at Rosen and try to get them from Kansas City.
Yeah, it would be a question of where he plays them, because he has Brian Ross at short. So I would kind of leave him
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry. You're right. Yep. I was looking. He has him on I must be looking at a righty. No, he has him on the bench. Yep, you're right. Never mind. So,
Well, I like
Ross
the
is
idea.
fine
And
at
it's just,
shortstop.
yeah, and then here's the Salazar, who was a way over pick. It's second, who steals 40 bases. Who cares? Like, I like the Mets. I do. I don't think they're division winners by any stretch of the imagination. I think that is Florida. And I share your concern with Florida. I don't think they have the power. Um, but I'm trying to remember correctly if they've ever really had the power. Um, they've always been more of the kind of we get on base and we run around and score runs kind of team. I mean, look, if they have three guys that had just about 30 stolen bases or more
Yeah.
last year, um, and a lot of guys that had 80 plus run scores. I mean, they're they're playing small ball, and that's fine. They're getting in. Yeah, they have one guy that hit 30, and then a guy that hit almost 20, and a guy that hit not close to, but kind of close to 20. Like, yeah, they don't have the power. Sure, a big bat in there might be beneficial if they could find a right fielder or left fielder or even a DH that could go and just pound the ball. That would go a long way for them to absolutely win the division. But I think as it stands now, um, they still have a very good shot at the division, and I think it's because of their pitching. I think their pitching's phenomenal.
I mean, I
Henning
think
and Franklin, Key, like just like top to bottom, their pitching's very good. They got some good guys in the bullpen, and they've got guys waiting to come up. I mean, you look at the three or four guys they have next up, kind of in that minors. They could easily flip one of those for a bat if they need
yeah.
to.
I mean, I've got a great guy that he could go out and get right now, and I'm sure the other GM would just be tickled to death if he traded him to him. But he could go out and get a case of the Menzies, and he would fit in right at DH, and I'm sure they'd love to talk to each other about that trade.
You're the devil. You know that's not going to happen. And you're right though. Don't God, you're right. Menzies would be a good fit over there, as would Geronimo Boganis or whoever you want to say that. Like either one would be a great fit, or even Jamie Sperry. Like get Sperry, get Menzies, put them both in Florida uniforms, and Florida takes that division by leaps and bounds over the Mets.
Yep.
Sure. And he has the firepower to do that. But you and I both know that the day that happens, we look outside and there's a meteor destroying the Earth. So the aliens finally invade and they're all Supermen. Like that's what happens the day that deal goes down. Florida would be much better looking north, and just not as far north for their needs. I think if they went to Atlanta, and they can get some help from there. That might be a little bit better, more beneficial for them.
Yep,
Go
I'm willing to
go.
swap New York and Florida until determining on who I think is going to win, depending on who makes the best move. I think if Florida gets a bat, they'll take the division. If New York gets a bat, I think they've got the division. I still think New York's got just a little slight lead on them offensively, but we'll see.
Listen, if I'm Florida, if I'm Hokie, staying up right now and saying, you know what, give me Donnelly.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't bid on him in a free agency. Nobody was going to. I wasn't going to do it either. Put him at second base. He had Florida as a whole at second. It looks like. Put him at second base. Put him at DH. Even who cares? Get those home runs. Get that bat in the lineup, and just let the pitching carry you to the promised land. But you're right. I think the Mets are going to be second. I think they have a good chance at the wild card. That pitching they have there, even though I don't like Dennis Rendo, I think that they have a nice pitching staff. I think they put together a nice hit. They still have some very good hitters. They just added a 30 home run guy yesterday. So I think that is going to be quite beneficial for them. So find a way to shore up maybe right field a little bit in New York. You're right, add a bat up there. Again, they don't have the cap for it, but go get Donnelly.
Yeah,
Donnelly.
And you know what?
Either the Mets or the Marlins, and that gives them a huge leg up over the other.
I would not be surprised if Peter won this division either. So, I'm going to give him credit on it.
Peter pick, I like it.
He went out and got Salazar. He went out and got Salazar in free agency. He's got a great staff. I still think there's opportunity for him and his team to compete for the division. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And so until Florida or New York takes it from Peter, from his cold dead hands, I still think that he's got a great opportunity because of his pitching.
You're right, yeah, but again, it's a limited window for him because you want to talk about the age of the Seattle rotation. I mean, all those guys are 30. I mean, depending on who he wants to slide into that fit spot, if he wants to put like a Paul Walt on there or somebody like that, then he's not quite 30 yet, but damn, is he close?
His pitching is good. Year. I mean, Peter thinks
it's good.
He always thinks his pitching is world beaters until they're not on his team. So
up until the moment that he actually trades them, right?
Yep.
Fails.
But I agree. His pitching is good. Just a little bit aging, but I definitely think there's an opportunity there for, still an opportunity for Peter to win. But his window is closing.
Well, honestly, again, I don't think his window is closing. PM's kind of like GB. The windows never close. They just, you think they're about to close, or you see the shades going down, and all of a sudden, whoosh, the light shines through. So he's going to do something there that it's going to surprise people. I'm not sure what yet. Obviously, it's not trades. He's tried his damnedest, and he just can't get those trades down. So, oh God, there's a threat in the chat. Let's hope that doesn't come to truth. But so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I think Pete has a couple tricks up his sleeve, and once that happens, things will look up. I mean, he's got a lot of young players there. Finds a way to flip some stuff, switch some stuff. Maybe he stops overcomping his guys. Maybe that would help a bit. He'll never do that, but we'll see.
We're gonna have to get a siren for you. Comp police.
Listen, I'm just trying to help people out, and apparently that's just not the way it works.
Also, let's move on to the Central.
I just like saying that I'm right. And so when they overcomp and I say it's overcomp, and they yell at me, and then I get to say that I'm right. And
before we go to Central, I would be buying Philadelphia stock.
I would too.
I like their team. I like their young team. The future's bright. I think they need some help on offense, but I like what's going on over there.
Yep. I think Dave came into a pretty shitty team that kind of Pody did a little bit of niceness to before he left. And I think he's made some nice picks. The one that surprised me that he's going to rub in my face, and rightfully so, is the Capitano has done much better than I thought he would. I still think he's going to be a great player, but he's definitely done much better than I thought he would to this date. So a lot of young guys there starting to come up or just about to come up. especially on the pitching side. I think his
Yep.
pitching is going to be the thing that's.
There we go.
All right, we're back on track. Hopefully, we didn't. What does everybody last hear me say? Let's go with that.
Yep.
Screw it. I was saying something nice. We're good. We'll move on.
Let's go to the Central. So
Yep.
this is gonna kill me because I
Because you're not
can't
going
believe
to
I'm
pick
gonna
yourself.
say this. What's that?
Because you're not going to pick yourself, and you're going to pick Milwaukee.
I like me some Milwaukee.
Yeah.
I would be buying this stock. I like the makeup of the team. I really like Zach Thomas. He's I got a crush on him. I think he went out and got Dan Mayrick, who was a sneaky good sign for them. I've got him rated. I've got Milwaukee rated both A- and A- on the offense and pitching side. But yeah, I really like me some Milwaukee. Jermaine's got a good team there. And it pains me to say that, but I feel like his team is definitely rising. Got some great pitching, sneaky good pitching, really. So I've got them taking the division.
I agree.
Yep, I've got them taking the division with Cincinnati taking the second wild card spot. But I would be selling Cincinnati stock if I held it right now. I think that they've got a good offensive. They've got some good offensive firepower, but their pitching isn't as good as it once was. They still got Mike Botts, but I'd be selling their stock, even if the fact that I think they're going to be a wild card team. I think they're going to slowly fall back and continue to fall back away from Milwaukee and even maybe Pittsburgh. But that's kind of where I see the 1-2. Pitt, number 3. Who knows? I could sneak into a wild card spot. You never know, but I definitely feel like it's going to be a battle to try to get that wild card spot from Cincinnati. So we'll see. Pitching is obviously something that my team's struggling with. Went out and signed Avalanos. We'll see how he does. He didn't have a very good spring training, obviously. He had 8 ERA, didn't win a single game in spring training. Not that it matters, but I don't know. I hope he does well in Pittsburgh, but I also know that I can't bank on him, carrying the team. So I'm going to have to get lucky to be able to compete with Cincinnati on the wild card spot.
Listen, it's spring training. Don't sell on your massive free agent signing just yet. Two stats to point out there that just say something's weird. First of all, his K to walk was fantastic. Still, it was still 3-1. His OBA was 443. Like it's like it was like it's almost like he was a new pitcher just trying to work on that one pitch. That's all he threw all spring training. How else do you almost get people betting 500 against you? But if this makes you feel better, which it won't, look at his dice. His dice is 295. Like his
Yep.
dice was sub 3, so something was wrong there in spring training. Either people were being played out of position or something, which caused his numbers to just go off the chart. So I would not worry about him yet. So as far as the division goes, though, I'm almost bang on with you the entire way. I think Milwaukee has a brilliant little team they put together there. Part trade, part draft, part forward thinking. Getting Santoyo from Cleveland going on 4 years ago now was a great pickup then, and it remains a great pickup now. He's got a little Chesty Taylor there that's starting to come into his own. We'll see how his sophomore season goes. If there's anything like his freshman season, then God, we're right. And his offense has been nicely put together. A lot of guys that he drafted, a couple of sneaky pickups that he's gotten here or there. I mean, he just picked up, that Jose Sambuso for basically nothing the other day. An outfielder that hits very well but doesn't look pretty. Picked up Kibler the other year, if I remember correctly, for basically nothing. I might be wrong on that, but I think it was basically nothing. No, yeah, well, pitcher that I didn't like, so I felt like it was basically nothing. Picked up Caulfield relatively cheaply. Like he's picked up some nice bats and he's done it cheaply. And then there's those guys like Zach Thomas and some of these other cats that he's had for a while that they're coming into their own. He's got more on the way. Bruman's not too far off. Mara, etc. So yeah, I'm digging Milwaukee. I think they take that division, and I think it'll be fun to kind of watch both Centrals, NL and AL. You're right. Something about Cincinnati doesn't quite sit right. They were a team that everybody was picking um, for a long time now. Um, and just we were talking about how good Theo is, and I'm not saying that he's not good anymore. He's a good GM. Um, but there's something about that team that just says they're gonna be good, but what's going on there? First of all, it'll be his finances might be a bit wonky. You might need to look into that. I don't know what's going on over there, but he has a pretty high payroll and might not be able to support all of that. So that'll be an interesting thing to watch out for. And on the pitching side, he's got good pitchers. They're all under 30. Most of them are under 28. He's got some solid relievers, but he's got nothing coming up. Like he's got Kelly Dixon, maybe, um, and nothing else. So it's one of those things that he could trade for a couple things, use his draft picks, pick up a couple things that he needs. And he might have already done that, and I might have missed it, but I don't think he's done that yet.
The
And
other
through that,
problem with that, you said it. The other problem is if you think his payroll is high now, he's going to have to pay for these guys. Cooper is going to be entering into free agency. Every single one of his pitchers that basically is
yeah,
anything is going to be entering into some free agent territory here with both Dean Botts in a year. Carreras is going to be in free agency. They're all going to enter into some.
at the very least, they're going to get more and more expensive through Arby. So he is in. And again, these numbers aren't perfect. I'm going to be the first to admit it because I know that my numbers is showing me like I'm going to be 30 million in the hole, and I know I'm going to be only 2 million in the hole, if at the hole at all. Just the way that this works this early in the year, but they're showing a $90 million loss. And even though a lot of that's going to be made up when he starts winning, ooh, that's tough. That's going to be tough. That's a big thing to do. And you're right, Cooper, some of these other guys, once they start, and Cooper's just about there for agency wise. So some of the pitchers, like he's going to need to really put up some money to keep these guys happy and keep them employed in Cincinnati. And he's going to have to make really New York Yankee type decisions here coming up. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of what direction he ends up having to go with that. But due to that, I would put him more on the sell side than the buy side. Not because his team's not good, but because the decisions he's going to have to make, he's going to have to start making now. And I don't know if he's prepared for that. As far as the back end of the division, and by the back end, I mean, kind of outside of those two, we'll look at the Pirates. Pirates have one of those young lineups that most people want. Got a lot of good young bats. Got a couple more coming up, not too far off on the way. Um, so the bats are where they kind of need to be, hitting a ton of home runs. I mean, how many 30 home run hitters you have last year? Two, almost four. I mean, a lot of home runs, a lot of balls flying out of that park. But you're right. You said it. Pitching is going to kind of need to be where you need to make a couple changes, make an ad here, subtraction there, and Pittsburgh will push for one of those wild card spots. But it's got to be close. I mean, if I have to look at the division right now, kind of as everything stands, without any other moves happening, without just from spring training forward, I think it's Milwaukee. I think it's in Cincinnati, and I think you and St. Louis are kind of looking at that next spot. Both you having a shot kind of at that wild card spot, but probably not as strong a shot as you should have. And again, I think your offense is going to carry you. You just need to show up that pitching a little bit. And St. Louis, GD kind of puts in his lineup, does his things, and moves on. Looks like he's trying to build a new stadium, probably because somehow his payroll and budget, all that stuff is just a mess. Probably years of just not playing too well. Looks like Matt Clear was not as good as everybody thought he was going to be, which is definitely hurting him. But he's got some nice young guys on that pitching side. Again, not everybody's cup of tea, but he also has a lot of good hitters, a lot of really good hitters. He's got a kind of offense somewhat similar to yours, not quite as much power, but a good little offense. So I think he's might make some noise that people won't expect, but he's in that position where he would be much better off trading every possible guy that he can, getting as much as he can for him, and start that rebuild process. But I just don't think that he has it in him to do that, which is unfortunate because I think that's what St. Louis probably needs right now.
Yeah, I mean he's got bats. I rated his offense at B plus, but his pitching isn't
Bad.
really bad. I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
it
what
is.
I think I asked it in the chat the other day. I said, I don't know what St. Louis is trying to do. I I don't get a sense of direction, um, because he's going to have to do something to get. And I know he's got some farm arms there. I see it in the AAA level, but is the timing right? I don't know. His bats are going to be older by the time those arms are ready.
Yeah, he's got some farms that I really like too. I mean, some of these guys are guys that I wanted to draft and just missed out on. But you're right. Like they look like, oh, well, they could be, but they're young. They're young, and there's power movement guys, the guys that most people don't like, but they're a few years off. So
I mean, the
it'll be.
guy that he could at this point in time, the guy that he could trade and get just a massive haul would be Onslow.
Oh
He,
yeah,
if he wanted to trade, that guy could bring a major ask to put just based upon the state of the relief pitcher in our league.
you're right.
You
I
know,
mean that's a guy that if he decided he would trade, yeah, he'd get a lot more than anybody would think for that. Because you're right, he's just this. I mean, even on the offensive side, there's a lot of guys over there that if he said, you know what, okay, um, he'd get a lot for him. I mean, there's a poor man's Hainsworth's over. There's a Hainsworth type of clone almost over there that he'd get a lot for. To get a couple outfielders. Like there's a lot to like on the offensive side. And if he said, "Fuck it," and then went to trade him, like he would have draft classes out the ass.
well, I
Um,
mean, who were we saying they need? Somebody was needed in the East. We were saying Florida. Why not Florida go
Florida
after Deshaun
and the
Smith?
Mets both need both
Yeah,
both need a bat probably. And again, the Mets added one yesterday, and they don't really have much left to trade that they want to trade, so it'll be hard for them to make any moves. But Florida has some stuff they could do if they wanted to get a bat or two from St.
I
Louis.
mean, Deshaun
Yeah,
Smith would be someone that I would look at trying to get
love
from
him.
him.
I love Deshaun Smith. I loved him in the draft a few years ago. Love him even more now. Just a
I don't think he'll
fantastic.
move him. I mean, I think
No,
he would move Hayes before he moved Deshaun Smith, obviously. But
he was
Hayes, I
trying to
would
trade
also look at.
somebody last year, and I can't remember who. It might have been Hayes. There was a couple guys he was looking to move, um, but again, due to whatever, he's not on as often. Um, so he's a harder time moving because, let's be fair, when you're not on often, you get the shit offers from GMs, and that doesn't help.
Yep.
So
And I think Discord's changed the league a little bit, which if we let's get through the teams, we kind of get into it. But I think Discord has changed. I think it's been a better chat tool than Zat
no,
or
by far,
XAD or whatever you
Discord's
call it. But
amazing. Like people want to hate on Polio all they want, but Discord has made the league um, better. That's why I'm gonna say that I think Discord has made the league better, and people might disagree. I know there's still people out there that just still don't like it, but I think it's fantastic.
I think it's great. Um, all right, so Milwaukee takes it. Obviously, we both agree.
Yep.
I'd be buying myself some Milwaukee stock. It kills me to say that, Jay, but I'd be buying myself some stock up there, up north. And then I still give the edge to Cincinnati for the wild card over Pitt, unless something happens and somebody gets hurt on Cincinnati's team and whatnot. I still don't like my chances. Who knows? We'll see what happens.
It's spring training. We got a lot of ground to cover. I mean, Cincinnati's not one to make many deals, so again, just
Yep.
like in the East. The East, there's a couple teams that add a bat. In the Central, there's a couple teams that they add a pitcher. Um, then it's going to make a difference for those divisions.
Yep. Let's go over to the West, where the cream still rises to the top in Arizona.
Yeah,
Um,
this is kind of an AL East situation all over again. There's the one team that's clearly the favorite, of almost above and beyond everybody else. Then a couple teams fighting past them to try to get a wild card spot.
my bad. I see GB's reminding me. We didn't talk about the Cubs at all in the Central. We should probably go talk about them.
Andy left, so why are we going to talk about them, GB? I don't understand.
New GM, I don't know. We got Jason coming on.
Was there a
Which
response? What did he tag?
Yeah, so Jason's the new GM. I think obviously a rebuilding team, the future's bright. I love me some Will Burbridge. Statistically speaking, he hasn't been that good, but vitals wise, he's still sexy. So
Listen, when somebody pays you $40 million to take his ass, you do it.
Yeah.
Well, like it was unfortunate. Like it was, that was a good move by them. And even leaving, leaving and almost making it look like you're leaving Jason the bag, but like somebody's gonna want him. Somebody's gonna want him. Like he's one of those guys. Like yeah, he had a terrible fucking year last year, an
It
absolutely
was
terrible
LA.
year, and not a good year the year before even. Like when he was comped, I mean he was a 4.5. Like he's not had a good couple seasons, but there's some gas in that tank, I think. Again, 25 million a year, you're not gonna find many teams that are gonna want him outside rebuilders, unfortunately. But you know, next year, if he holds form, the closer he gets to the end of that contract, um, the closer you're going to find somebody that's going to want him. So maybe not now this season, but next off season, somebody's going to bite on that. Chicago gets a couple nice picks out of that, and move forward. I mean, Andy has basically torn that team down to the ground. There's a couple things left that people might want, a couple things that they probably shouldn't trade. Um, it'll be interesting to see. I think Jason goes in there, takes a quick stock, and goes, "Yep," and then just kind of flushes most of the what's left, gets what he can, um, and continues that rebuild.
I
But
bet Hokie could get livings from him pretty cheap. That'd be a DH bat for him. Not the
yeah,
best, but
not the best, but I mean,
something.
27, making $7 million a year, coming off a
Hit
32
32
home
home
run
runs.
season. Fuck it, take the shot. Give
Yeah.
him, what he wants for him. Take it, and run off. Even if you take Sandoval, wouldn't be the worst bet. Even and I know Andy doesn't hates the guy. Jeff Bissonnette wouldn't be. You could find a way to get him too, because I believe one of Hokies outfielders I was not a fan of. Get both. Throw Bissonnette out there. Throw Livings into the DH spot. There's almost 50 home runs added to your lineup. Take it. Take it and run.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, are we allowed to? GB, was that good enough for you?
Yeah. Is that fine, GB?
Crickets. All right, fuck them.
Yeah, that's
All
fine.
right. Yeah.
Arizona, I graded at A minus and A minus, but I still feel like they're the team to beat in the NL. Love me some Saul Dazal actually, but he's a good pitcher, obviously. He went out and added a couple decent pieces in free agency, Wentworth and Howden. I don't remember how much he spent on those guys, but I liked them. He kind of added a few pieces in his bullpen that I think were decent little signees.
Wait, David Wentworth?
Yeah.
It looks like he was a free agent.
Yeah.
Come back from himself. Looks like he got him on a minimum deal.
Yeah.
And then the other one was
Howden.
Howden.
He's going to use him in the bullpen.
He picked him up
from Minnesota.
Minnesota. I automatically don't like him. No, yeah, that's just seeing if Brent's still paying attention. Who's technically mic'd up, it looks like, but not talking. Interesting. Yeah,
he's been talking. He's just been talking to himself.
Don't we all?
How good his team is.
Arizona's the team to beat. I think not only in the West, in the NL, but possibly all of baseball. And I know that's not like a shock. I don't think shouldn't be a shock to anybody, kind of considering what they've done the last 2 years, the last 3 years, the last 4 years, and beyond. Like, they're on a nice little 7-year streak now of kind of being good to very good, and they've won the World Series the last 2 years. And I don't see why it would be any different this year. Their bats are phenomenal. They got a very good offense. Not and they got some guys, some nice bats too, kind of down in the minors. Not too many, but one or two, which would be nice to kind of try to keep that churning. And they added somebody this afternoon, and I'm trying to remember who they just added. Um, I thought was they added the pitcher. They added the pitcher Hinton, which I think was a brilliant move for them, because he will be a very good
Hinton.
kind of 3-4 man for them. Hinton, yeah, Nigel spelled differently. Hinton. I think that's a great move for them. So I think it was one of those things that, Andy or Ryan just said, "Here's what we want." Arizona just said, "Fuck it, okay." Like I doubt there was even any much give back and forth on them. They just did it, and I think it was a good move. I think that's a good way for them to shore up, at the very least, the back of that rotation, and just make them even stronger than they already are.
I think they've also benefited from a generally weak division over the
Yes.
last few years.
Well, having one of the best closers in the game doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
And we had 26-year-old Mark McTeer who's just is brilliant. So we'll see.
I do like Los Angeles in the number 2 slot.
I agree.
I like the fact that they have they made some moves in the offseason. I like their second baseman, Morin. He's a good player. Their weak pitch, the pitching is going to hold them back from ever competing with Arizona. So until they shore that up, it's going to be Arizona all day long. Then I see kind of Colorado filling in the third slot, followed by San Diego and then San Francisco.
Yep,
But
that's the exact order I have it in. I think Los Angeles is probably the one that hosts the wild card game. To be honest,
really,
I do. I think they finished as the top wild card spot. I mean, their pitching is a little bit suspect, but their bullpen again is very strong. Um, they have a very strong bullpen, and I like their offense. I like their defense. I think that they're not a team that's going to really make Arizona sweat. Insert Squidward graphic here, but I think they're a team that should win the top spot in the wild card. Um, and again, it'll be close. There's a couple of teams again, the Mets, Cincinnati, even Pittsburgh, San Diego, Washington that are going to be in that wild card hunt. But I see LA as the team probably that kind of gets that top wild card spot with everybody kind of trying to fill in behind them.
See, I really struggle with them getting a wild card spot just because their pitching is so meh. It's really Carney's decent, but beyond that, it's really subpar.
Yeah,
Because I could see 2 wild cards coming out of the East before I saw Los Angeles getting a wild card spot.
listen, I like their bullpen, and I think that he's not going to sit idly by. He's going to find a way to add a starter somehow, because that's really what he needs. One starter would make a big difference for him, but I still think he's a wild card team and probably the top wild card team.
Yeah, I think if he went out and got a big arm, it would definitely give him an opportunity. But
That being said, there's about 27 teams we could say that about with confidence. So, but yeah, I think in his case, particularly an armor, if not 2. I mean, again, for as much as Arizona grabbed Hinton was great for them, like if LA had been able to get in there and do the same thing quick, like it would have been even better for them. So
big arms are hard to get anymore. You have to give up quite a bit.
well, it's just look at free agency.
Yeah, and that's just money.
And I know we're gonna get and that's the thing. Like, and I think we're gonna get there in a minute. But just look at how free agency goes on the pitching side of things, and you'll see how important even bad pitchers can be. So, but I like Colorado too. You're right. I think there was a lot of us groaned when Carlos Madrid got a comp offering.
Yep.
There was a collective just like, oh, you got to be. And I know Pete was probably irate that Madrid got a bid and like 8 of his guys didn't. So, but Colorado's got a nice little team. Like I like, it's Colorado. They're supposed to be a big offensive team, but I like their offensive side, kind of what they're doing. There's a couple guys over there that look like they're dying as we watch. Unfortunately, like Glenn Tolme just dropped off the map. But they've got some young guys coming up that are going to be exciting to watch. Joel Miller, Mike Thurmond, Joe Sourley is one of my favorite little first base prospects. Ray Barrentoes, however you want to say that. Like they got some good young bats up and a couple not too far behind. So maybe not this year being their year, but next year, the year after, I think they'll start making some noise.
Yep, I do like Colorado. I think their hitting, they'll be way advanced on the hitting side. I just don't know if they're pitching. Looking at their farm, they just don't have as much as I would hope to see.
No, it's they've got 1 or 2 guys that I really dig. I like Herbert. I like Harold. I really like that the Mario Cazole basically is a talent you can get. I think he's going to be quite good. But again, those are years off. Dusty Ransom, one of my favorite names of relief pitcher in the last couple of years. Again, a year or two off, but still. It'll be interesting to see. Sims isn't bad. Teo, I really like. I think he's a great pitcher. Joel Smith, still putting up some solid work. Not great, but solid. I
What
gotta
did
love
you
it.
remind me? What did you get for Teo in that deal?
I traded Teo and 20 something, 21, um,
Oh,
for
that's right. That's
for
right.
8, 38, 68, and 98.
Yep.
So
You you are a whisperer.
there's there's Mass. I'm assuming that was Mass, but and again, it'll be interesting to see because he has Kawaguchi. Yeah, I think that's right. Being a free agent after this year, so that's going to free up a whole bunch of payroll for him to play with next year. I mean, that 30 million could easily turn into two $16 million pitchers next year, which would be a big benefit to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he comps him if he holds form this year. So he'll probably comp him as an A, which would be a silly decision. If he's smart, he'll comp him as a B. Comp police in action here. But again, that could also help them freeing up that cap to put other places. This year, I think they're going to play very well. Next year, I think will be the year you really want to watch them. And San Diego, I think this is the year that they start to regress, maybe. And I don't know because they have some young pitchers that I really like. That some of them might be up this year. Looks like one started in spring training. Tony Caslin, but there's a couple of guys behind him. Palin, Bramwell to an extent. It'll be interesting to see how they progress this year and if they're ready for next year. That might extend the life of San Diego a little bit. But I don't know. They're the offensive side of the ball is starting to slip a little bit. They should probably trade some of those guys if it doesn't look like they're gonna make much noise this year. I think Resendez still gets them some nice stuff. So they just don't have it on the offensive side. They need to wait for some of those bats they have in the minors to come up, and I think until then, trade some of this stuff, get what they can for it, and just prepare for a little bit of a step back the next few years.
Yep. He could go talk to Hokie and give it Resendez to Hokie.
And Hokie would probably pay up for that too. So I think that wouldn't be a bad idea. Um, the only one that I would be curious to what he does would be someone like Brandon Tinker, very good young pitcher. Does he move them? No, I doubt he does because he has other good pitchers up there as well that he's going to want to keep. The pitching makes him want to stay. I guarantee it. But the hitting's just not quite there. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. He has a lot of cap space. So, I mean, I'm surprised that he didn't make more moves in free agency to kind of shore up that team. Um, so it'll be interesting to see what San Diego does.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they're probably, oof, I don't know, fourth in that division, I'd say, pretty easily. And then San
Yep.
Fran is still in the rebuild. It's now just the Hick show. So we'll see what happens at the City on the Bay.
Yep. Very young team. Still rebuilding. Obviously graded out really poorly, but part of it's just rebuilding. But yeah, I think Arizona continues to take advantage of a really milk toast division. They can just lay waste, and 100 wins is not out of the question for sure.
No, I mean, if I was going to project anybody with two that I would project at 100, that'd be New York and Arizona. I think they can easily reach that mark. And then there's a couple that I think are like mid 90 kind of win teams. So,
all right. So for predictions, who do we got in the World Series?
told you he was mic'd up. I warned everybody. I am going to go with Arizona. I want to take Milwaukee. I really do. So I'll tell you what. I'm gonna go with the championship series first. I'm gonna go NL championship. I'm gonna go Milwaukee, Arizona. With Arizona kind of just squeaking it out based on experience alone. So, and then on the other side, it's going to be New York and I don't know, not Minnesota. It's tough. That side of it's going to be tough because there is a bunch of good teams after New York, Detroit, Minnesota, um, Seattle, Houston. I mean, I think it's going to be New York and probably one of them, which I know is a very broad topic and a terrible answer, but I think one of them is going to be the ones that face New York. And I don't know, New York just doesn't quite get to the World Series, but I think this is the year that it might be a Yankee Arizona kind of showdown for the big prize.
So in the NL, I had Milwaukee against Arizona in the championship series. I had Arizona winning and making it to the World Series in the NL side. AL, I also had New York and Minnesota in the championship game, with New York taking it and winning the World Series over Arizona in 6 games.
Yeah, I can't fault that. It'll be interesting to see once the playoffs happen, kind of who stands out, because a lot of it revolves around pitching, and excuse me, it'll be interesting to see that who's pitching last out. But I think those are easy picks. Yeah,
Yeah,
Arizona and New York seem to be the better teams.
I
So
think the wild card teams, Baltimore and Seattle in the AL, and in the NL, Florida and Cincinnati are my 2. No, those are a little harder to pick just because there's a lot of teams possible, potential candidates for those. But that's who I had.
yeah, you're right though. That's what I mean. I want to go New York, LA for NL, for wild card, and for AL. AL's tough. I'm gonna go Minnesota and Seattle, Houston. Whoever doesn't win that division's gonna be the other wild card.
So I had a lot easier time picking the AL wild cards and division winners than I did NL. Because with the NL, it feels like there's at least a half a dozen teams or more that could vie for a wild card spot. And in
Yeah,
the AL, I'm pretty sold on Seattle being one and Baltimore being the other. I'm pretty confident Houston, Minnesota, and New York are going to win their divisions. But on the NL side, it could be all over the board.
yeah, you're right. I think in the AL you're looking at 5 teams, and those are the 5 teams you're expecting to make the playoffs. In the NL, you're looking at the 10 teams,
Yeah.
for those 5 spots. So it definitely, kind of broadens out quite a bit.
All right. What do we want to go to next? What's next
Uh,
on our hit
let's
parade
let's
here?
let's knock off season awards, and then get into the nitty gritty stuff. So who do you have for your AL and NL MVPs?
Okay. In the AL, let me just double check here. As for the MVP,
Yep,
I'm going Sean Walker for New
Walker
York.
for the MVP. MVP.
Yes.
Interesting.
And then in the NL, let's see, who did I have in the NL?
Thanks,
You
JP.
might
I'm
you might need to
aware.
pick. I didn't spend enough time on the awards.
All right, so the AL is going to be between a bunch of first basemen, I think. Which I hate to say, but there's a lot of good first basemen in the AL. I think one of them is going to win. I don't know. I think it's going to be between 3. I think it's going to be between Lopez, Hale, and Paul Lucy. Um, Lucy won it last year, so I would not be surprised if everything goes well in Seattle if he repeats, becomes the back-to-back MVP champion of the AL. So I would give the edge to him, just because the voters apparently liked him last year. And the NL, I'm going to go with a bit of a shock maybe for some people. I'm going to go with the biggest free agent signing of all time. Nelson Alaya, I think, is going to win the MVP this year.
Interesting.
I think the Mets, since they're going to be playing well enough to actually maybe get into the playoffs, I think that'll help push him. And he's just one of those monster bats. And I think this year is the year that he kind of earns a little bit of that money that he's making. So
So I've got kind of a dark horse for the MVP on the AL side, and I know you were mentioning Hale or Lucy, but Nick Collars out of Baltimore. He was a rookie
he,
last year.
he's a guy that I have kind of in that top 10ish of potential guys on the AL side. He's a guy that I think is going to start making award like racket soon. But again, depending on how Baltimore plays, and again, I don't understand if there's any hard case for this, but it seems teams that don't play well don't get awards. I mean, there's been plenty of years that there's been bats on rebuilders that are better than bats that win the MVP, and I don't know for a fact, but I feel like the game somehow takes into account to some extent. So if Baltimore plays well, I can see him making a run for it. If they don't, I don't think we'll see his name at the top.
Yeah. Did we do Cy Youngs? Did
We
we talk
can.
about that yet? That's
I
where I
think
was hoping to see Walker in the AL.
I think it will be. I think it's one of those things that they rely so much on wins, which is unfortunate. But Walker and even Sam Sarade over there in New York win a lot of games because New York wins a lot of games. So I think Walker is the guy that you're looking at as the favorite. But I think that's unfair because I think Minnesota has a couple pitchers that are very good.
Mm-hmm.
That might be just as deserving, if not more deserving, in either Dale Andrew or Matthew Lilliburn. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes if wins really play a factor. Because if wins do, then you're looking at somebody from New York or somebody from one of the other divisions winners. Houston with Javier Ramirez, Tom
Yep.
William of Seattle, example. Um, but I'm going to guess one of the New York pitchers probably just because they'll win more games than everybody else.
Yep. And on the NL side, I like Saul Dizelle rather. I like Pendergast on New York's. Wilson, if he has a good year with Pete, we'll get some looks. Don't sleep on Joe Henning from Florida either. So definitely
Now,
like a lot of pitchers on the NL side.
I think the NL even is again just as much as we're not sure who's going to make the playoffs over there, and it's kind of a very broad field. I think the Cy Young's the same thing. I like Pendergrass. I even like Taylor off Arizona a little bit. But I'm going to go with a different Taylor. I think Chesty Taylor. If Milwaukee
Woo!
really plays as well as we think they do, I think either him or his battery mate there, Santoyo, could make a run at this thing.
Wow. That is definitely a dark horse. You don't think Clue would be a better choice over those two?
Well, I see. Here's the problem. I think they have three good pitchers vying for that spot, but you have a young pitcher in Taylor. For some reason I can see him, especially if we kind of do that, SP1 go versus SP1, et cetera, et cetera. If he's sitting in that 2 or 3 slot, he's gonna be better than most of those pitchers he's gonna be facing. So I think he can outduel them. He's gonna get that win total racked up, and since that plays such a big factor, that could help out quite a bit.
All right. What else?
Rookie of the year, I can just throw out some random names for you.
Yeah, I didn't even look at that.
You're not missing much. This is one of those things that's even hard to fall because if the team plays well, you're looking at guys that can go like if Seattle plays well and Tally hits well, does he get a vote? Who knows? Does it go to a pitcher? It's been going to a pitcher a lot lately. So does Toronto have Rich Haven in their rotation? Does he get a shot? Baltimore's got a trio of young guys in their rookie season: Sam Minion, um, Trav Perry, and that pitcher Razzo as well. If he starts, like it'll be hard to say, but I think probably be pitcher. Could be Razzo, could be Haven if they start over some of those other guys, just because for some reason pitchers have been getting a little bit of an edge in that category the last couple decades. So
Mm-hmm.
NL side, I don't know. I mean, I like Castlin out of San Diego. If they make some noise, he gets some wins. I think that's going to help his stock. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody like Wesley World of San Francisco starts him if he just bats the hell out of the ball. Or dark horse Joel Miller. If Colorado's going to start Miller, I can see him hitting well and maybe sneaking into that conversation. So
Yeah, it's hard to predict. Depends. I think you're
I,
right. Pitching, obviously, pitchers are seem to be getting the edge lately.
I think I was right last year on at least one of them. I have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure I picked Key to win the NL Rookie of the Year, and I think I have to go look now. I might be making that up. I make a lot of things up. Headlines show all. AL Rookie goes to Truesdale. NL Rookie
And Castlin out of San
goes to
Diego.
Seth Key. So Key did win the Rookie of the Year, so I was right about that. When I called that last year, I was wrong about
Yeah, he
everything
had a good
else,
year.
but he did. Listen, he's one of those guys that whoever drafted him was a genius. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. Not a genius. Well, there's two sides to every coin. The person that drafted him is a genius, and the person that traded him is a stupid.
The Whisperer.
Well, he trades everybody.
It was a
In
move
drafts,
to make a move to make a move. You were 2 or 3 steps ahead of us. See, that's what you're thinking, right?
That's a thought, or I'm just stupid. We go with mass for this one. All right, what's next on our call sheet?
So we were going to talk a little bit about the role of the relief pitcher in our league.
Oh, this would be fun. All right.
And if anybody else wants to join the conversation, that you can feel free to join. We're not going to bite, but I think, and I've been in the league a while now, I think this is the first time where I've seen the craziness that is starting to evolve with the relief pitching role. And it's due to what I think is more of a supply issue. There just isn't as many good relief pitchers, particularly closers, that is causing the inflation in the cost of relief pitching to go to astronomical levels. We saw it with bidding this year in free agency, where Ratzliff got over $16 million a year. Who was the other guy that got a big contract?
That was the guy that I signed, Hernandez.
Hernandez
went 16 for 7.
16 for 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and looking at him, he has closed some games, but he's not a superstar, and he's not a spring chicken.
He's 30. He's 30. He's not Evan as old, but he's close.
Right. But it's just 10 years ago, we would have never paid that much for a relief pitcher that I can remember. And I think the other thing you're seeing more of too is you're going to see what's this going to cause is more relief closing out games by committee, which I'd have to look, and I haven't done enough research on it, but I don't know if Mogul really likes to. I don't know how successful that is in Mogul. I wouldn't think it's very successful, but
it's not, from my understanding, based on the fact that to do that, like, you almost have to name multiple people closers. And when you do that, you kind of screw the rest of the bullpen. Because from what I understand, Mogul will very much follow what is prescribed. And again, if you have guys especially with a lot of people have a lot of starting pitchers in their bullpen, they'll pitch what they should pitch as starting pitchers, and that kind of really fucks with things quite a bit.
Yep.
And it's really hard to convert starters to closers. It's one of those things you have to decide almost as soon as you draft them. I know a lot of people go the other way, and I think that's part of the problem too. Is if you notice a lot of the high gap, so the high what's the bloody word that I'm looking for?
Endurance, like the middle of the road endurance relief pitchers.
Shit. Difference between peak and overall upside.
Oh, upside.
Yeah, let's look for upside. So I think when you see a relief pitcher, and I believe Atlanta traded for one of the ones that you drafted a couple years ago, you immediately turn to a starter. Ricardo something, I think what the guy that you traded to Atlanta. He was a relief pitcher that you immediately made into a starter, and I think a lot of people are doing that. A lot of high peak, high upside, high peak, high overall, not high overall, but high peak, high upside relief pitchers that look like they could be good, people are turning into starters. And I think that's making a lot of the supply and demand problem that we see, is that if you have a draft and you typically have 15 relief pitchers, say there's 2 good ones and you're maybe making them as starters, you're left with kind of the shit that's left over.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is playing in quite a bit to the supply and demand problems that people are making them starters. I've tried to go the other way to some extent and turn starters into relief pitchers. I've had only one success, and he's not been on my team to actually reap that benefits for me. Big shock to all, I know. But I've tried to go the other way, and the problem with that is just the same with the starters. You have to start young. You have to decide almost on draft day, hey, no, I'm going to make this guy a relief pitcher. I'm going to start lowering his endurance and seeing what can happen now. Because when you try to do it later, things tend to fall apart. There was about
Yep.
3 starters I had last year that I didn't need, but needed to be useful, so I turned them into relief pitchers. Some of them pitched well. I mean, most of them pitched sub-4 ERAs, but is it going to kill them pretty quickly? Yeah, it very well might, because I tried way too late to do this.
Yep. One of the things that I've started doing, and hasn't gotten to the point to prove it out yet, but I've started taking guys, and in order to convert them, I make them middle relievers. Have them go 2 to 3 innings, and it seems to drop their endurance down quicker. And then once they get into the relief pitcher status, then I switch them over to closer if I want them to close games. But I haven't proved it out because most of the guys I'm doing this with are in my double A's,
Right.
and a couple guys in the triple A area. But it's going to be a little bit of an experiment with guys that I feel like don't have a very good shot at making my rotation. Because anymore, it seems like closers in the state of our league right now, if you have a 80 control and an 80 movement, you're worth a lot of money.
Yep.
As a relief pitcher. And age doesn't seem to matter anymore with the lack of supply that we have.
And you're right. That has kind of made it when they do hit free agency, people are paying a ton of money for them because nobody's growing their own anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, case in point, I signed a guy in off season, Simon Coffey. I don't have a closer. I've been trying to get a closer. I'm going to see if this guy can close some games. I have no clue what he's going to do. He'll probably shit the bed for all I know. And I'll be back in a situation where I'm closing by committee, which is never good. But he could surprise and turn out. I mean, he's got some decent relief pitching numbers, but it's nothing exciting, nothing, sexy. So we'll find out. But it's that kind of relief pitcher nowadays that's getting money. The guy who's 34 with a mid to high overall in the 70s that maybe closed a few times in this past, not closed, but did something in his career, who's now being asked to be the closer on a team, and you're going to see them lose a lot of games.
Right. And again, a lot of it is people are converting these closers or relief pitchers to starters to try to get the jump there. And that's causing a lot of it. And a lot of people, for a long time, not a lot of people cared about kind of these closers. A lot of them were just using pitchers there and saying, fuck it. Starting pitchers there and saying, fuck it. And so not a lot of people were drafting closers. There's only a few people that kind of consistently try to draft relief pitchers. I shouldn't say closers, relief pitchers, as often as they can. Doug is one of those guys. If you notice, a lot of his first round picks the last couple of years have been relief pitchers. I try to get a couple every draft if I can, and Maddie tends to try to get a couple every draft if he can as well, it seems. So there's some people out there that almost look like they're going out of their way to get those players, either to develop or to trade or do what have you. Maddie, for example, he usually drafts guys that I always want for relief pitchers, and he always keeps them. If you look at his trade blocks, and they're always in that not going to trade, don't ask about category. And so some teams are doing that, and some teams are making a killing. LA's had 4 or 5 good closers or good relief pitchers, and they're making a killing off it. I mean, they just got a comp A out of the one, who he self-proclaimed as his worst relief pitcher on his team. I don't think that's necessarily true, but at least in his eyes, it is. And he's got a couple other good ones there to keep. Chicago has 2 very good guys. That would be closers that they were not going to move either one of them because they're very good, and it makes their bullpen fantastic to have both those guys at the top of it. So it's a market that is the opposite of overly saturated. I mean, it's barren to an extent, and that's why you get guys like both Radcliffe and Hernandez this year getting 16 plus a year, each of them. And a couple of years ago, the gentleman when Matty signed for San Diego, who ended up being an albatross contract after 2 seasons, but signed him to a massive contract as well. So a lot of these guys are getting 16, 15 plus a year because there's nothing else out there. And what else is out there, nobody's trading because they have it. Why should they give it up? So
and it's quite
causing
interesting.
this problem.
And it's almost the exact opposite of what we're seeing some major league teams do, where they want to get to the 6th inning, so their starters take them up through the 5th inning into the 6th inning, and then they bring in their superstar relief pitchers for the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings.
Right.
Right, just bing, bing, bing. I don't know, and I haven't played around with this to test it out. I'm sure the other guys who do this a lot more than I do would like to find this out, but could you get Mogul to do the same thing if you had a closer and a setup and a short relief guy who were, stud level? Could you get Mogul to only pitch 5 or 6 innings?
Oh, easily.
I know you can mess around with the sliders and you can say, don't pitch through trouble, keep a low pitch count. I think you can manipulate it, but I just don't know how good Mogul would be to try to carry out that strategy.
That would be I'd be very interested to see that too. That would be interesting, something to look into. But I think you can manipulate it in a way just with those sliders alone, to make that so Mogul kind of has to do it. I don't know how well it would work, because there's an extent of, we don't really see it too much, but I know players can get tired. And maybe 14 is not really where that happens. I mean, I'm thinking of the other versions of Mogul, but I can see relievers being overworked, and maybe become more injury prone, due to that. So just an issue of Mogul being Mogul. Some people have strong bullpens and get benefits from it, and some people try to cobble shit together and hope for the best. So
On that note, I think also we wanted to sneak in the topic of picks. So while we feel like the relief pitcher is getting a lot of money currently because everybody's converting them and there's not as many around, I think this has been true for the most part in the league, but it's becoming even more amplified. Is I think the overall value of picks, in my opinion, most people are overvaluing picks. And I'll be honest, I sometimes put myself in this category. I tend to like to hang on to my picks. And so what I've thought about doing, and I don't know, because it could change every year depending on the quality of the draft, but I really kind of wanted to put together almost a 1 through 160 and assign kind of the gold standard value to it, like a monetary value in terms of cash.
almost like the NFL does.
Yeah. Like,
there's a chart out there for the NFL draft picks that basically does exactly that.
Yeah. So I think it would be interesting. And I think in general, people kind of say, well, this draft sucks or that draft is better. Everybody has their opinion on the draft, but it would be cool, in my opinion. And I'm probably going to try to do this, but I'm going to put together an Excel spreadsheet that, pick one generally is $100 million. I'm just throwing that number out there. I don't know if that's right or not. Let's say it's $100 million. Well, pick 2 is what, and almost see, I don't know if it'd be easier to go bottom up or top down to get to 1 or 160, but it'd be interesting to kind of at least put a monetary value. That way, if we're going to use kind of a gold standard to determine kind of a value of something, you could use that when you see people trade for picks or specs or whatnot, and kind of see what value monetarily that would be.
I think if you look at the NFL one, I mean, that runs close enough to what we do. I mean, there's about the same amount of teams and everything. I think that's going to give you exactly what you need. So, but you're right, and I think it's funny because I think a decade or two ago, so back in like maybe the '60s, or even early '70s, it was the opposite. People were hoarding draft picks and trading. They'd rather trade specs. And now I think it's a little bit different. People would much rather keep the prospects and trade the picks. And again, but I think at the same time, you're right. Picks can become overvalued, to some extent, by a lot of GMs. And a lot of GMs rather have those picks than those players. But I just feel like as far as trading goes, people are much more willing now. I mean, how many draft classes have we seen trade even today? I mean,
Yeah, I
how many
think you're
teams?
right.
Houston, Arizona, both went out there and gave up the first and seconds for players, without a second thought. So Arizona only the first, I believe, not a second as well. But it's still, I think it's New York. New York continually sells draft picks, to keep their blue machine going, and don't give it too much second thought.
I
And there
think
are
the
plenty of
reason
people
why
out there.
the specs are hard, and I agree with you. the reason why I think people don't want to trade their specs is because they drafted them and they see their specs better than the other person does.
Potentially, yes.
And
And I know, well, for a fact, we know Minnesota has that problem. There's certain prospects that
absolutely.
Minnesota absolutely refuses to trade because they drafted them, they like them, and fuck you if you want them, and that's fine. There's nothing against that. Matty does the same thing. He's just very upfront about it. Matty flat out says, "Here's the guys I'm not trading. Pick somebody else who don't pick anybody at all." And like it or leave it. A lot of people don't like that approach, but it's at the very least honest and bold. It's just, here are the prospects I have. Here are the ones you're not going to ask for because I'm not going to trade them no matter what. Pick from something else. Um, it can make trading a little bit harder, but at least what to expect. But you're right. People draft these guys and generally don't want to trade them, and so they much rather trade the thing that they don't know, the unknown, the unseen, the pick. But picks do get overvalued. People don't think like, oh, I really want this pick, and then when you actually look at it, you're like, oh, that's really only X of a player, at best. So, and the problem
Yep.
with that is too, the more you look at it, the more people are getting much better at drafting.
Yep.
For a long time, there was those couple people that were really good at drafting, then everybody else was okay at drafting. And now there's a lot more people that are good at drafting.
Yep.
Doug, a guy that nobody ever talks to, barely is around, drafts quite well. Theo drafts quite well. A lot of these guys are, Warpreet drafts very well. And you're seeing it too, especially with, Houston and I doing those reviews every year. We're grading the same guys high most years in and out because they're drafting well. It's not like they're getting lucky every year either. They kind of know what they're doing and they're doing it. And that kind of, I think, puts to the slight overvaluation of draft picks as well. Is that people are like, oof, they draft well, so I'm going to draft as well as them. So I'm going to keep my picks and I'm going to get these really good players.
So with that being said, there's been a talk about people are much more interested in giving out these giant contracts. I think we got in a pretty big discussion about it a couple weeks back when people are seeing free agent values go sky high. I think Avalanos was probably one of those guys. Pete said that we could have got him for
Nothing.
pennies on the dollar, which I still don't believe is true.
It was no. I mean, if you look at the deal that Pete offered Mass, Pete offered Brent. He offered Brent, Avios, and a bunch of other pretty good players, for one player, for one prospect. Now one pretty good prospect, but one prospect. And so you easily could have re-signed any and all those guys to contracts, and it wouldn't have been anything close to what they actually got in free agency. So I mean, I know. I'm not sure if he was one of the ones that Pete and I had talked about last year. We talked about a couple guys, but he wasn't asking the moon for it. Now and again, that's one of the things I was talking about. I think during that conversation that I always found, we'll call it interesting, is that people want comp A value or comp B value. And some people's comp A value is like, what would be a first round value and a second and a third round value. And that's not comp A value. Comp A is the top of the second round pick, but most people see it as a first round pick. So it's one of those things that's just it's a same thing like people say that they have a third round pick available, but when you look on the chart, you're looking for, like, where the hell is it? Oh, it's at the start of the fourth round because there were so many comp picks that got knocked back a little bit. There's always that chicken or the egg. Well, is it a third or a fourth? And depending on what end of it you're on, you argue for the other, even if you're going to turn around and do the same thing to somebody else 10 minutes later and argue the exact opposite way. Same thing, comp A selection. People say, okay, well, that's a top of the second round pick. Well, no, most people say comp A, they mean first round pick. And then they, of course, try to ask for more past that. There's been a couple people I've said they don't want a comp A. I'm like, all right, here's comp A. Like, well, I want this player too and this player. Like, well, that's two comp A's and a comp B. Like, why? That's not comp A value. That's comp A plus. So it gets a little wishy-washy when they're saying that, and not peculiar. But I know in that case, if Pete had gotten that one solid to good prospect, he would have given him up, and so we wouldn't have had to go through this massive bidding process.
Yep. So in general, though, we're seeing giant contracts as opposed to one prospect. So how will this trend continue? Will we see people doing this over and over and over again in the future? Who was the other big contract? Priestley, and then you've got Alea. I always
Priestley was technically a re-signing, so he got traded like 5 times and then got re-signed and then traded. Alaya was the big one 2 years ago. This year was obviously there was the 2 relievers got 16 plus. The Avianos got 20 plus. So there was a bunch of big free, and there was some other solid to big free agents as well. And Poog got a bunch of money, so on and so forth. So I think you're going to continue to see that. I think you're going to continue to see people preferring to spend boatloads of cash and pay way more than they should for way longer than they should, than buckling down and trading prospects or picks to get the players that they also could use.
Yep, I agree. I think we're going to continue to see that.
Now, I don't think it's going to get any worse than it is. I think we've seen its peak. I think it might stay similar to what you saw this year. You're not going to see, I don't think, too many of those Alaya kind of contracts. And I think that was a kind of once in a generation kind of thing, where somebody could just literally not afford their all-star, probably should have traded him, didn't. And then that's kind of what happened. So, but
all right, anything else on our run sheet that we didn't talk about? Because we've been going at it for a little bit.
I would honestly have to go and look at the run sheet to see what we missed, if we missed anything.
Anybody in the room have a question for the panel?
Panel, of course, being
they're all asleep.
Probably.
Maybe stopped typing. Brent's watching wrestling. Jay's figuring out his next move.
He's waiting for me to send him the link so he could put this on YouTube for everybody for tomorrow.
I didn't have anything else on the...
Nope, I don't see anything else on the call sheet, so I think that just about does it. I think we've basically covered what we're going to cover, so it'll be interesting to see how the first sim goes out 2 days from now. See if we see any more trades between now and then. See if Fred has anything for us right now as he's typing.
The biggest question will be, who is going to sign that big hitter? Will it be Hokie or will it be the Mets? Who's going to sign that guy?
Again, Mets just got a big hitter the other night. They gave up their first round pick for him. So do they need another one? Wouldn't hurt, but what do they have to give? They have a couple of really nice prospects, but I don't think they want to trade any of them. So
I want to see a Pete and Hokie trade with the Menzies. I think it
makes the most sense. It makes the most sense. It'll never happen. For whatever reason, those two would rather let themselves starve.
You know what we need to do? You need to broker a 3-way.
No, I'm not getting caught in that. I could easily. I know what you're talking. I could probably. I don't want to. I do, but I don't.
Trust me, you want to do it. I would see that. I'd put some money in just to see it. I'd probably put $3 million in just to see it.
Listen, I was very close to brokering a 5-way at the last deadline, so could it be done? Sure. Should it be done? Sure. Will it be done? No.
It'd be like the couple getting divorced. You're the moderator, the judge, or whatever in that room, and Hokie's on one side and Pete's on the other, and they basically at each other's throats, and you're trying to get the deal done. I think that would work.
Here's what would happen. I would get the deal done, and they would think it would be just me dealing with them, and then I would post it as a 3-way, and neither of them would accept it. It'd be one of those things that Andy would push through, but neither of them would put accept on it. It would just be me posting this thing, and everybody just staring at it. It would probably be the most clicked on thing ever on the forum.
I think you can make it happen. I have faith in your grade whispering skills. I think you could make it happen.
I know I could. The question is, do I want to?
How dirty would you feel? You probably just want to go take a shower after all that.
Just thinking about it makes me want to go take a shower. So.
All right. Well, Fred didn't put anything in the channel.
I know. He started typing and then he didn't. And then
Brent still thinks he's the king of the 3-way.
Listen, he's the king of wishful thinking.
I don't know what kind of 3-way he's talking about because I don't know.
He does a lot of wrestling things. I'm not going to put it past him.
I'm not going to question it. It's kind of, who knows what they do
or what they don't do.
Have you looked at the draft yet at all?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've fully scouted at least twice.
So
Now, I have
what's
not rescouted since the defensive edits have gone in, but that really won't make too much of an effect on the guys that I've kind of identified.
overall? What's your value on offensive prospects
Just
on a
like every
grade?
year, there's some very nice offensive bats there. I mean, and that's the one thing. No matter how bad or how good people think the draft is, there's always some killer bats. So I think this year is no different from that. I think there's some bats that really stand out.
And I haven't looked at it, but it didn't look like an overall deep draft to me when I looked at it. Usually you can tell just by sorting through some things of how deep a draft it is. It didn't look overly deep. Um,
It's
I
one of
also
those
have
things that it's one of those things that you never think it's as deep as it is, and sometimes you think it's deeper than it is. There was, I think last year, I was saying like I think it's gonna be a really deep draft, and then it dried up quick, a lot quicker than I thought. I know I was talking to Dan about it, and we both thought it was deep to first, and he started backing off. I was like, no, it's not as deep as you think. I'm like, no, I think it's still deep. And then we're both like, oh shit, it just dried up. Like it just died all of a sudden, like about a round earlier than we both thought. So um, this draft might surprise us. It might be a little bit deeper, more juicy, you might think. But who knows? I mean, the picks have been flying left, right, and center. And we're still a week and a half away, so we're not even done from seeing the majority of the moves, I think, on the draft front. Um, so it'll
I
be
just
interesting. I mean,
I just found a relief pitcher who's definitely going to be converted to a starting pitcher. Justin Skylark. He's the exact guy that will get converted.
yeah, Justin Skylark, 16 years old, right-handed pitcher, 40 upside. Yeah, he's gonna. Not that I have my draft thing open. Um, sure. Yeah, he's one of those guys that somebody's gonna grab and probably convert, and rightfully so or wrongfully so.
Now,
Someone would
Brent
be
doesn't think you should
stupid to
convert him.
convert.
I don't know.
Again, I always err on the side. I think it should go the other. Should be more willing to convert starters to relievers, than relievers to starters. But I mean, no,
I think he
I
gets
think
converted.
I think you're right. I think somebody will draft him and try to convert. Is also right. I think that you shouldn't. I think you should leave him as is, and see how that plays out.
I haven't had very good luck converting. The last guy was Kilminster, and he turned out okay. But it's not as often as you think that it would work.
It's one of those things. If they're 16, I mean, there's two guys there at the top of the draft for on the relief side that are 16, with massive upsides. That if you're gonna, people are gonna grab them and convert them because they're gonna think it's a good idea. Um, and then 10 years down the road, they're gonna be like, "Where's all the relief pitchers?" Well, I'm gonna go spend 30 million on one that's really not that great, and the cycle will continue.
Yep.
I mean, there was people last year that was telling me like, "Ooh, are you going to convert Mike Grimes?" No, no, I'm not. I'm going to leave him as a closer, and I'm going to let him close out games for me in the hopefully not too distant future. Like I am not going to take a guy that I like as an RP and try to convert him to a starter. There's plenty of starters out there. Why ruin something that I actually like? I would prefer to have a bullpen of all actual relief pitchers and not half starters like most people.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Hernandez does for you.
I is one of those things that I was surprised more people did not give me crap about, especially the length of that contract. But he's 30. So at the end of that contract, he's going to be 37. Um, I'm holding out hope. I think that he can easily last the length of that contract. I think he can, and I hope that he will. I mean, obviously, only time will tell. But I did not catch much crap for that, so I think I'm not the only one who thinks that way. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Um, and how long, just like anything else, and everybody's going to fun of this, how long he stays on Seattle to begin with. I mean, I have two good relief pitchers right now that are a couple years away from hopefully making the majors. If they jump and they go gangbusters, then he
Mm-hmm.
might become expendable. I might just trade him to somebody that needs one. So who knows? Time will tell.
All right. Well, what do you think? I think we're going to put a bow on this one.
I think we bow it up, ship it out, and try to get a couple hours of sleep before we go back to work.
All right. Well, thanks, Mizzy.
No, it was fun. I enjoyed doing this. Not just me. I don't to go through 3 cups of water. I could just drink the one and make it through just fine. So
yeah, it'd be interesting to have someone come in and play the third spot in this conversation.
the more these get done, the more people start to listen to them and say, "That looks like fun. Let's do that." And then you actually get some panel discussions going.
Yeah, sounds like Brent's dipping his toe in the water just a little bit. He's just not sure yet.
Just the tip, just to see how it
Just the
feels.
tip. He's used to the tip.
Just to see how it feels.
All
And
right.
that's the note we're gonna leave on. So
All
all
right.
right, good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.